Hello everyone. So today I just kind of wanted to do something about something I'm very passionate about, which is DC. So I'm going to kind of talk about my feelings for DC comic films, the DCEU, and then obviously kind of what I think the future of the DCEU could be. And yeah, so when I kind of started getting into comic book films like Blade and obviously all the Marvel films that kind of started, I I do love like the Superman films. I think they're absolutely incredible. Like all Superman all the way up to Superman Returns. I love the Batman films, all for very different reasons, and I think their characters relate so much more to me and who I am than Marvel does. I don't like the Marvel comic books. I found them too juvenile at times. And every story I've read either just seems to be drawn out way too long. There is no denying that Marvel have had the most success in the movies. I think that they're more of a consistent company in terms of quality and the product they do turn out, which is again, I think that's a thing that separates the DC and Marvel fans is, the Marvel films very much feel like product, whilst they have very relatable characters, they feel like product. But with DC, I find that there's a lot of interference from Warner Brothers or the execs or the people producing the films. But when they land hard. When a director has a pure vision for the film or three films or franchise, I think then it lands pretty consistently, as a very good film. And this kind of leads me obviously up to the DCU because I love Zack Snyder. I'm a massive Snyder fan. I think as a creative force, there isn't very many like Zack still left, that we have, which is someone who understands character, how to tell a story visually. I've rarely seen filmmakers nowadays who can tell a story visually. All you've got to do is look at the opening of Watchmen. You've told he told the pretty much an entire piece of backstory through a Bob Dylan song. Like that for me says everything about Zack as a filmmaker, and I was excited to see Man of Steel, and I love Man of Steel. I think it's such a bold, daring vision of what Superman could be. I love that they went not more of a nihilistic approach or a darker approach, but they went a more realistic approach, which is you're seeing Superman at a point where they haven't become Superman yet. How we envision the Christopher Reeve Superman. And Henry Cavill just embodies that character, heart and soul. And I think that that film was such a learning curve that we haven't ever seen Kal-El take. And I think that was just an amazing film. And then I love Batman versus Superman a lot. It's probably it was up there with Watchmen as my like two joint favorite comic book films of all time. I don't think you can get really much better than kind of Batman versus Superman, because it takes the character of Kal-El that we've grown with Man of Steel. It adds a new element in the form of Bruce Wayne, which is what I love about it, is that we're seeing like similar events played through a different lens, obviously the opening, and but we're seeing obviously Bruce's story and how he's coping with the announcement of aliens and beings that he's never encountered before, and how that affects the world. And I think that it's realism, but it's the kind of themes and messages that it's dealing with is so rich and rare for this kind of film. do all the points maybe come across as coherently or as smoothly as they should? I don't think so, but I think that Zach is someone who doesn't just hold back. They put everything onto the screen and just gives everything over to the film. And that's why I love it. I love Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor because it's not the Lex Luthor we know already. We have never seen this interpretation. That's why I love Jared Leto as the Joker, because it's a different interpretation. It may not speak to you personally, but it's something different. It's something we haven't seen, and that's always refreshing. I'm always down for a new take. And obviously we had Suicide Squad, and you know, that obviously kind of it's had its problems, and Wonder Woman, but recently I have sat down and I have seen the Snyder cut of Justice League, and for me it was the kind of fulfillment of that three picture arc of, you know, the rise and fall of Kal-El. Because something I hear quite a lot is, I don't like how DCEU have done the films. They should have all had origin stories, then we had the team up film. And I completely disagree. I don't think you need that to enjoy a story. I think the problem with the Marvel way, and I do enjoy Marvel films, I do enjoy the MCU because it's something a little bit different. But what I enjoyed about the DCEU a lot, which that it was very much like, the first one was a Superman story, you got an origin story, and it's this element that throws that world into chaos. And then we get Batman's story in the second film, but Superman's a massive character within that storyline. And then I loved the little videos at the end, teasing Aquaman, showing us that the world has become bigger. There is more metahumans. There is more to this world than we ever imagined. And obviously we get that with the introduction of Diana as well. And then obviously with Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman, we're expanding that world out. And then in the Justice League, what I loved is that we get the introductions to Cyborg and Flash, but they're not really like strong origin stories, as in, you know, I was born here, this is how I became this character. We get the glimpses of that, which is great, you know, but they're characters that needed to come into this story. Oh, and Aquaman, they're characters that needed to come into this story at this point. So I imagined it being like one long timeline, and it's like Superman, then we have a Batman, then we have, you know, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and it felt very much like the comics, where you would have you know, Batman issue number 57 that led to Superman issue 89, that led to Suicide Squad issue 100, you know, and it would then cross over, but we're seeing it as a continuous storyline, but with different characters. And I think that's what sold me to that, because then you're not always going, right, origin story, origin story, origin story, team up movie, origin story, origin story, origin story, origin story, sequel, you know, team up movie. And that just kind of at a certain point just feels very, very redundant, because we've seen them all before, you know, we've seen so many origin stories. I think that's why we lose interest in characters like Batman at times and Spider-Man, because we've seen that origin so many times. So I loved the Snyder Cut. I think it was such a fulfilling, bold experience, where a lot of the themes, and obviously there is set up for potentially future films, but this kind of leads to where I'm going, which is, where's the DCEU going from here? And I mean, I've had lots of conversations with lots of different people about this, and I've got to be honest with you, I want them to finish the DCEU. I want them to stop calling it the DCEU. I'm done. I'm done. Because let's look at the kind of damage, because obviously we've now got the Snyder Cut, which is great. I'm glad that that kind of feels like, for me, a full stop on Zack's involvement, at least to me. And then with Aquaman, that followed the Justice League cut, we had obviously the change of tone began a lot more. We then had obviously we've had Wonder Woman 84. We've had all those films, Shazam following, and then we've obviously had Birds of Prey. And I think the change of tone has affected the series to no end. I think that as a commercial kind of entity, it's not very successful. A lot of people are complaining about the continuity errors between film to film, the tonal shifts, and I think Flashpoint is a great way for them to just kind of say, okay, all this is part of the multiverse, brilliant, we'll go to J.J. Abrams' new DC verse or whatever. And for me, that I think that's what I'm now looking forward to. I've been heartbroken too many times with Warner Brothers and kind of what they've done with Batman vs Superman, Suicide Squad, and Justice League. I just think that they need to just give the reins to someone else and just learn from the mistakes now. They need to learn. I'd be very interested to kind of see if they do Zack's work as maybe animated films, or like the kind of proposed sequels that he had, like Justice League 2 and 3, maybe as animated films, so you bring Ben Affleck back to do voice animation, and because again, he doesn't want to continue playing Batman, or at least that's what I've gathered from all the reports that have come out from the films and his kind of personal reaction to doing that. And obviously I think it was his GQ interview as well, he was very candid and kind of saying like, I'm kind of done. Plus having him working concurrently with Robert Pattinson might confuse the marketplace a little bit as well. People might say, well, Robert's Batman, why is Ben still Batman? We thought he'd left. I think doing them as Elseworld stories, but not like connected to whatever their new big plan is. I mean, personally for me, I think the DC films work better as standalone stories or trilogies. I think that's where their strongest suit is, and I really want to see them tackle more adult themes and kind of adult material. I think with Joker and obviously the Batman vs Superman Ultimate Edition and even the new Justice League, they're very adult. I think they're rated R, and or like 15 over in the UK, and they're not for people who want to take their kids to see them. And I think that's a marketplace that can be tapped, because a lot of people who are interested in them and are big fans are adults. So I think you could do like the Robert Pattinson series maybe as a very intense, kind of PG-13 franchise, but then, and Wonder Woman as well, but then you also can, you are making more adult fare. So that's my personal opinion. But I hope you've enjoyed this video, because it's something I've wanted to talk about. I mean, whilst one half of my brain really wants Zack to come back and continue the hard work, especially with rumours that now Ayer's getting his cut of Suicide Squad, that like those 5 films are now complete, and that feels great. I'm very excited for that. But then you've also got kind of the offshoots like Aquaman kind of onwards that don't quite fit into that. I like that it kind of ends with Justice League. and seeing like the obviously the Kal-El arc being as good as it is. And I think, you know, I personally would rather see Zack go off and make films like Army of the Dead and see what other stories he has. He's made 5 comic book films over the past 15 years, I think. So it's a long time. And I think you know, like any creative, I'd like to see what else they have, because I love films like Dawn of the Dead and, you know, even Sucker Punch, which is flawed because of Warner's interfering with that film. I'm just very excited to see kind of what else that he can do and bring, you know, he use his imagination and tell more wild and vivid stories. So let me know how you feel in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, I will see you on the next one.